Let me take you back in time for a minute. It's March 5th, 2019. The trailer for the most anticipated season in the history of television is released. Game of Thrones fans from around the world are overcome with excitement and joy as the final chapter of their beloved series is ready to commence. Life is good, but no one could have imagined what would happen next. The entire world devolved into chaos. Some were left devastated.
CNN has learned President Trump is very upset.
How dare you!
I think that we should consider having them arrested. I really mean that.
While others are in complete denial.
I love it.
No,
I love it so much.
I love it too.
Yeah.
2 years later, we are left sitting here wondering, is there any way to resurrect a once flourishing fandom, a return to the good times?
Wouldn't it be hilarious if this show sucked too? Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Nerd Soup. I am Beau Oliver, joined here today with Aaron the Nerd Soup Monkey, and we are back to review HBO's new original series, House of the Dragon, Episode 1. The Heirs of the Dragon is the title of the series premiere. And overall thoughts, I thought this was kind of the perfect setup episode. You come out of it having a good idea of where these characters stand. You got some good development on these characters. The arcs of, I'll just get right into it, of a character like Viserys. It feels like you've been with this man for an entire lifetime. You feel all the grief, the stresses, the pressure of producing an heir, of being a good father, of being a good king, of juggling your political rivals. But for all these characters, I thought everything was so well established. The setting, the feel of the show, the music. It felt like we were transported back into Westeros. It doesn't feel like you're an outsider looking in. They put you directly into the story. And that's what Game of Thrones always did so well at its peak. So as an introductory episode, I thought it was as close as great as you can get. What about you, Aaron?
No, I agree. It feels so good, too, just to be back in Westeros and actually reviewing a Song of Ice and Fire content again. It feels right. And I agree 100%. It definitely was a great return to Westeros, but I think they did a lot of things that kind of helped differentiate it from that original series, especially mainly in just the way like they shot certain scenes and the way they presented and some of the editing. Obviously, it's familiar, but they were able to do certain things that made it feel a little different and unique to House of the Dragon. So I like that first off. And yeah, just introduction of these characters I thought was going to be very important for this pilot episode, and I think they nailed it pretty much. I was definitely, like you said, with King Viserys, Rhaenyra, Damon, Alicent Hightower, just getting to see these characters, that introduction, kind of where they are at this time of their lives and what's going on. I think the foundation was laid pretty well going forward. But yeah, like you said, with Viserys, he was one of the standout acting-wise. I think Paddy Considine really nailed this character. You got that sense, like, especially when Damon was talking to him later on, just saying just how weak he was. And I think that really resonated in his performance earlier on, before that moment where he actually gets called out on. And Matt Smith as Damon, I think that's he is legit a perfect casting for a Targaryen.
Yeah, especially with the way that character acts, the perception that other people have about that character. He perfectly captures that whole vibe. Yeah, and Paddy Considine, you made a great point that he portrays this sort of weakness even though he is a good man. And you could see that based on the relationship he has with his wife and his daughter. But as all characters in this world, they're complicated, and they get put in situations where they have to make these choices that no person should ever have to make.
Yeah, I thought all the lead up to the show was like, yeah, no gratuitous sex and violence. A lot of sex and violence in this first episode.
Right. Maybe they just got it out of the way in the first episode. They know that Game of Thrones fans are such sickos. We'll let you guys whet your appetite a bit, and then we're gonna stray away from this.
Yeah.
But no, there was no absence of gratuitous violence or sex. aspects.
And I think one of the ways it helped separate it from the original series was evident right in that prologue. Something they didn't really use too much in Game of Thrones, but with the voiceovers and you had the text kind of setting the setting, a little Daenerys Targaryen shout out right there.
That was awesome. That was like the Blade Runner opening crawl, right?
But yeah, really just setting the stage, setting up just the dynamic with how Viserys was picked over Rhaenys and the queen that never was, and Harrenhal. We got to see, I thought Harrenhal looked nice. It didn't look like a dump for once.
Right. It was very spooky, very eerie. Perfect setting. We all know the history because of the scene with Tywin and Arya, so that was the perfect place to really open the show. And like you said, it's quick, but it's effective.
Yes.
Because you get the tension between these two potential heirs, and obviously it went to Viserys. And I thought, all these characters, all the Targaryens looked really good as Targaryens. I think the show was very well cast. Obviously, you made the point about Damon as well, but that matters. Do these characters look like they would fit the medieval setting? And I think they all look appropriate.
Yes. And even like the writing from the standpoint of just feeling natural and of the time.
Yes.
Even though
it was very well written.
A made-up time. But I think you mentioned when we were watching some of the later seasons of Game of Thrones how it feels a little modern at times.
Mm-hmm.
I think this really got the setting and really established that well. Through the dialogue, costumes, music, everything really just came together.
Right, and you see even some of the informal dialogue was well written between Alicent and Rhaenyra. When Alicent is the one telling her, "Oh, aren't you concerned about your position?" And Rhaenyra's like, fuck this. I just want to be who I am. Yeah. Even though in the back of her mind it is something that she is very aware about. The fact that she is not considered an heir because she's simply a woman. So you see the sexism in this society, even when it's someone who loves you. Viserys very much, I think you can gather that he cares about Rhaenyra very much, but still doesn't consider her to be good enough to be his heir, even though she's his cupbearer. She's sitting in on the councils. It's not like they're hiding anything that they're discussing from her. So in a way, it's almost like subconsciously he knew, okay, eventually she's going to be my heir. I do trust her, and I think that scene between them in the end, just a great moment to kind of set up the rest of the season.
Right.
She's happy, she's crying, it's happy tears, but one of the showrunners said it, she doesn't know what she's getting herself into. And we see it with Viserys constantly cutting himself on the throne. It's tough.
Yeah.
Where the crown is heavy, man.
That's one of the things where you hear from the books about kings cutting themselves on the throne, and it's like, well, obviously the Iron Throne from Game of Thrones is so iconic, but this one,
I love this throne.
If you trip,
you could die.
You're dead.
Yeah. Straight through the fucking gullet.
And we got some dragons. I thought the dragons look great, especially the scenes of them flying through the air. And then they had the saddles, which I think you're very happy about.
Yes, I love seeing those saddles.
I think as much as Matt Smith might have stole the show as Damon, and every time he's on screen being just a presence, I think Rhaenyra added not a sense of calmness, but when she was on screen, I think she kind of grabbed the attention in a different way. I think she was very effective as that character, and obviously she's one of the more important characters you have to establish in the series, and I think they did a great job with that.
Yeah, she's obviously not an overwhelming presence physically, but I think she does pack a lot of charisma in her performance, and it was easy to gravitate yourself to her as sort of not necessarily the hero just yet, but as the main protagonist of the story. The
scenes with Alicent I found to be very very nice, kind of establishing that friendship. She had the great scenes with her father and elicited the appropriate emotion, especially in that funeral scene as well, and even the earlier scene with her mother. I think establishing that connection made it even more heartbreaking at the end when her mother died. So
yeah, I think they did that very skillfully, where they established these relationships in very brief moments and scenes, but it still hits. You still have that emotional attachment to these characters that you barely know, and that's tough to do. We see shows do that all the time, where they introduce a character, they put them through tragedy, and it's just all too rushed. Mm-hmm. But these moments really did stand out. And I thought the dragon looked great. We were all wondering how the CGI was going to look. Rhaenyra's dragon is named Syrax, the golden dragon. I love the tamers, or I forget what their actual title is, but speaking Valyrian to the dragon, trying to get it into the dragon pit, which, as we know,
dragons do not do well in captivity.
But yeah, they look great. Caraxes is Damon's dragon. I thought we'd get that great moment with him and Massaria just chilling, just vibing with the dragon.
Yes, the connections to the dragons. Obviously with Daenerys, she always had that connection They were her children. But seeing these dragons with these characters at these times in their lives, like just that established connection, I thought you could tell that there's just something different in that relationship. And Targaryens, they're closer to gods than men. And that you really got the sense of that with their connection to these animals. Not quite like warg-like, but they have just that, very similar to how all the Starks besides Bran were with their direwolves. Like, they just have that, they're on the same wavelength, and they all have their distinct looks too, which I liked. At times, I think, with Daenerys' dragons, they kind of were the same, but just different colors. I think these ones have distinct features about them, which I really liked.
That was a golden dragon, without a doubt. Mm-hmm. And I think their attachment to the dragons, it instills this sort of hubris in them, where someone like King Viserys believes that he can change the sex of his baby based on manifesting it. I just believe that this is going to be a boy. And it turns out to be a boy, but it ends in tragedy. Mm-hmm. So it speaks to the limitations of power. Yes, you have the power of the dragons, you've conquered Westeros, but there are still things that are not within your grasp. And obviously, I think that's a main theme of A Song of Ice and Fire as a whole. And I think that's why that conversation at the end was so important when he talks about Balerion, the Black Dread, and that this was a power that we never should have trifled with. It felt like he was saying, we don't control them, they sort of control us.
No, that was a great scene at the end. If we were just going to skip to that point, seeing Balerion's skull, just how massive it is compared to the skulls that we've seen in the past, it's just, we need to see that. We need to see Nakon's Conquest at some point. I just want to see that fucking mammoth unit in the air.
I would love some
cities.
Flashbacks, maybe, if there's a moment where you can make that fit naturally. Because the prologue is unique to Game of Thrones storytelling.
But that moment with his daughter, I think it was important for Viserys too, because up until that point, he does come off as weak, and he makes impossible decisions and selfish decisions at times, and he's a very, complex character. But that moment with his daughter, trying to get her ready for what's to come, I thought it elicited some emotion in me too, and especially just some of the dialogue callbacks, call forwards to what's going to happen with like the Long Night and the Prince That Was Promised, the Song of Ice and Fire, even little things like promise me Rhaenyra, promise me, promise me Ned, promise me, like just very.
What did you think about that, tying that into the main show?
At the time, like it's definitely a cool like little call forward, and obviously I think there is some. I don't think it's not appropriate to like call that like where they wouldn't know about it, but I think it very much was like trying to establish a connection to the main series.
I'll tell you what, I don't think that happens if season 8 was well received, but if season 8 was a banger season, that would have been a great moment. Thinking that the Targaryens had this secret in the back of their head, because people always said King Aerys, that's why he went crazy, because he thought the White Walkers were coming, burn them all. Yeah. So maybe if it was a secret passed down from king to king, it makes more sense.
I don't hate that. I think that's like it stands to reason that could be accurate, because once the Targaryens, especially from this era on, as we see when Robert took the throne, how some things are lost, and I think that kind of makes sense. I'm jumping back to the beginning to set up to the small council. I know it's like impossible, but for a second there, I thought like, is like Pycelle gonna be here? That old fuck,
right? For some reason, right? It's almost like the Archmaester just turns into a new Pycelle as the generations go on. That would have been a funny touch.
He's just reincarnating himself.
I thought those scenes were great. They did a really good job, obviously, establishing the tension between Otto Hightower and Damon, setting them up as political rivals. But those conversations, them politicking, talking about what's happening in the free cities. So it looks like Lord Corlys may be taking some trips in future episodes to handle those problems. But I thought those scenes were great. I always love a nice small council scene. Yeah. Those were some of the best moments from the original Game of Thrones, even going back to the early season 1, the small councils with Joffrey and Tywin. So, and we got a lot of them. There was about 3 or 4 of them. And all those moments were really important to what was happening in the actual show. The reaction when they call the small council after what Damon does with the City Watch, that was an incredibly tense scene. And the way Damon is sitting there, so smug, so confident, knowing that I can't be touched. The worst you can do to me is send me to a northern kingdom where my life will still be pampered and polished, and maybe the women aren't as beautiful, but I'm still a prince at the end of the day.
Sleeping on the Vale.
I know, right? Well,
No, the Vale seems like a terrible place to live.
What we witnessed with Lysa Arryn, I mean, come on.
Like you said, getting introduced to Corlys Velaryon, Otto Hightower, I think those characters are going to be I mean, definitely very important going forward. But I think, Corlys struck me as somebody who is very
pragmatic, practical.
Yeah, it's like, Damon's a piece of shit, but like he is the heir. Oh, well, yeah, I guess he does kind of suck. Well, what about my wife?
That was hilarious, dude. He switched up in like 10 seconds. He goes, well, Damon's the heir. It's settled. But my wife's fantastic. And she has a male heir.
Yeah.
Just putting that out there. All right, guys, before we get to the second half of this review, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor for today's episode, Smile Brilliant. I'm sure that everyone can agree that we live in stressful times. Whether it be the economy, the political climate, balancing work and home life, all of these things lead to stress, which is the most common cause of grinding your teeth in your sleep. The damage of grinding and clenching in your sleep can be irreversible, resulting in worn-down tooth enamel, cracked teeth, chipped teeth, and infections. The cost of cosmetic fixes can run you thousands of dollars, and night guards at the dentist can cost anywhere between $200 to $600. Yikes. But with one of Smile Brilliant's affordable, custom-fitted night guards, you can return to a peaceful night of sleep without worrying about any potential damage to your teeth. Right now, if you visit SmileBrilliant.com, you will receive 20% off all products, simply by using our promo code NERDSOUP. Their night guards run as low as $45 per guard. Plus, they have a great selection of other great products like whitening trays, whitening gels, electric toothbrushes, and so much more. And remember, you can head on over to SmileBrilliant.com and use our promo code NERDSOUP for 20% off all products. So don't wait, hit that link and take care of your teeth. So it's so important. So important.
But yeah, even setting up, like, honestly, the different types of character dynamics, like, every character so far, except for maybe a couple, has been presented in a light that is, like, you can criticize and find attached to something that you don't like about them.
Yes.
King
right.
Viserys with his wife and that decision he made. Otto Hightower. Oh, he's against Damon. Damon seems like a psychopath. He's probably a good guy. Here's my daughter.
He basically pimps out his daughter.
Yeah, and obviously Damon just being Damon. So it's like even the characters, you're like, oh, maybe he's opposing the mean guy, so maybe he's good. No, he, in his own way, he's just as gray or even bad as the others.
Yeah, he's just as ambitious, and I think you could see it. He plays his role well, being the ultimate sycophant to Viserys. And I think Viserys does trust him because he speaks honestly to him. But like you said, he's just as ambitious and willing to go to those lengths, similar to Damon. Maybe he's better at hiding it, but for Damon, that was a play too. You put me in charge of the City Watch after firing me from these other positions. Look at this power I now wield, so you better stay on my good side, or the City Watch may come knocking on your door and maybe chopping off some appendages.
When you're just rolling through the streets,
that was brutal, man.
Picking off anybody.
Yeah, I had to look away. There was obviously the scene with Emma was very hard to watch. And I imagine for a lot of people, they had to look away in those moments. But when they were just strolling through the city, it's super brutal, man. Gestapo vibes. Mm-hmm. Just picking off anybody you can find. The way they shot Damon, too, in the armor looked great. But when it was his time to execute the murderer, the way they shot that was so epic and scary at the same time. He's just a dude that you don't want to fuck with. And I think they really did establish that, where he's not as unhinged as like a Joffrey or a Ramsay. But like I said, you want to stay on his good side.
No, and yeah, I think that sequence was shot very well. Even the tourney sequence, some of the POV shots, and
yeah, the tourney was awesome.
Some of like the battle sequences, like it just had a different feel to it in some of those areas, which I really appreciated. Even like the setting itself of the tournament, it looked very grand and something that you would think of when you imagine these old royal tournaments. When in the Game of Thrones, it looks very run down and kind of like that contrast from things of that nature. But when you think of the throne room of the earlier seasons, it looks very grand and beautiful. In this one, it's very, a bit run down, a bit grittier.
Yeah, it's under construction.
Yeah.
A great line was from Rhaenys when the two knights start fighting after the joust. And she goes, and the day turns ugly. It's a perfect way to capture this first episode. And
you can tell like it's a different time, 200 years or so earlier. So maybe things like brutal murder in the tourney, it's like more of an accepted thing.
Right. Normally, I guess in the tournament we saw on season 1, if you die in the joust, you die.
R.I.P. Sir Hugh.
But when they start fighting, King Robert,
stop this madness in the name of your king.
I miss King Robert.
Yeah, me too.
Start the joust before I piss myself. Yeah, that was a great scene. And King Viserys, counting his chickens before they hatch, throws this great tournament to celebrate the birth of his son. And then he loses his wife and his son the next day, or that same day.
Yeah.
So it goes from celebration to tragedy in an instant, and we've seen that with this show many, many times. But that's when the show really, even though it was a hard scene to watch, it felt like they weren't shying away from the brutality, and that's something that the later seasons of Game of Thrones were really missing. This felt like this is the world we're spotlighting, and we're not going to shy away from the good or the bad.
Yeah.
And for me, that's when I really felt like the show hit its stride, where a lot of the drama and the tension over Succession was going to come to a head. And it really does with a lot of those scenes at the end, like the great confrontation between Viserys and Damon, and we've mentioned it several times, Rhaenyra and her father having that conversation. But the second half of the episode,
once the
it was
tournament
just
happened,
great. Yeah, everything after the tournament was great.
And bouncing back from the tournament and the events that are happening, and obviously the complications with Aaron's birth, that was a lot to take in. It was definitely one of the more brutal scenes I remember watching from even Game of Thrones standards, and the decision that he has to make, and you just see the weight of decision on him and the pressure to produce a male heir.
Yeah, and even though he loves her,
yeah,
she's the queen, she's got this status. At the end of the day, because of the way this world operates, she's still a woman.
Yes.
And that's the most important part of her existence, which is very sad.
And I think,
so even though he loves her, it's, what can you do for me?
I think it's very much, as brutal as it was, I think there was some intention to it, not just to have shock and awe. I think it was really just to establish how the society views women's and taking control of their choices and basically using them for one thing, and that kind of highlighting the struggles that are going to be present going forward for a character like Rhaenyra.
Right, because her father, the way he viewed her mother, is now drastically different from how he is viewing her. He's seeing her as a potential ruler, as a potential monarch. So you wonder, it's not going to be as easy as, okay, you're the heir now, let's set you up for this. You don't change your opinions on something that easily.
Yeah.
So I imagine that their relationship will become a bit more complicated as he sets her up for this role, because there's going to be hesitancy from everyone, even when they have the conversation about who should be named over Damon, and Damon's listening in. A couple of them say, hey, we can't just have a girl heir. That's not going to fly. So that's going to make things way more complicated than they need to be. But he makes that decision in the end. It's funny when characters do the quote unquote right thing, or the thing that makes the most sense, it can be the worst decision of their lives. So yeah, we see Damon looking in or sneaking on the council, and then he goes back, and that's when we're first introduced to Mysaria, who's one of his most important allies in the show.
I hate when I can't perform well because I'm too busy thinking about lines of Succession.
That happens a lot, man.
Yeah.
Kendall Roy, they say he has big problems with that.
It's that very common thing that most guys go through.
Right, and he's such an asshole.
Am I going to be king? I can't have sex right now.
Well, that's why you need to find a good queen to hype you up.
She does hype him up.
Yeah, she does. And I think he's set up as such a bastard in this episode, but that moment humanizes him, that he actually does care about what people think about him. He puts on the little cloak and he looks all depressed, and yeah, she is hyping him up a bit, so sad.
No, you did great.
Well, that's what inspires him to rent out the brothel and declare that Viserys' son was heir for a day, which totally infuriates him, and that is a low blow.
It's not
such
nice
an asshole thing to say, yeah. And Hightower saying, I've had 3 witnesses corroborate the story. You're a square, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to take into account who it is, because, I mean, technically, he was heir for a day. No lies. But don't be a dick about it. But yeah, this man really, he just did an after party at a brothel after a funeral. I mean, people grieve in different ways. And I think that's what Damon's argument was.
Well, it's interesting, the relationship between Damon and Rhaenyra, because they do seem close.
Yes.
That first scene when she walks in on Damon sitting on the throne, and he goes, well, I am the heir. And he has that moment at the funeral where he does encourage her to step up, saying that your father does need you. So I think they really establish him as a super, super complicated character. Obviously, he cares about his brother and he cares about his niece, but he goes about it in extreme ways. he's just a troubled man, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't think a character like Mysaria is going to be one to center him. I think she's going to exploit him, exploit the anger, exploit the rage, and of course exploit the position.
No, I was gonna say that was like a bit of an emotional scene too when she calls for the dragon to burn the bodies. I mean, first, and I think like even just knowing Dracarys from Daenerys, and she would say it with just such ferocity and always these big moments, but to have it being done in like a sad moment where like it's just this powerful word that is associated with kind of Targaryen might, but hearing it now in more of a somber moment, I thought was like a cool little contrast.
Yeah, it's a twist on it, right? Where it's saying goodbye instead of annihilating your enemies.
Yeah. But like, you know, just things like that, the Valyria and Dracarys, and it's just so natural to the Targaryens. And
right.
Just seeing that, those instances where they have to use that, I thought was actually very cool.
Yeah, and I think all the actors just fell in these roles where they give off the vibes of a royal family, of powerful people who have been doing this for some time, that they're not new to it.
Or even like back to that throne room scene when she walks in on Damon just slipping into Valyrian, like it's second nature.
Second nature, yeah. They have that on Duolingo, so I imagine that's how they learned. Been taking a few lessons myself.
No, I've been taking Dothraki.
Are you sure? I haven't seen that on Duolingo.
I got the upgraded version. I pay more, but...
Momoa's doing a masterclass?
Yeah.
Nice. I thought a character like Alicent Hightower is going to be so important as this story really starts to unfold. And her introduction, obviously she's got a very powerful father, Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King, and she's got this relationship with the heir to the Iron Throne. So she's in a very important place right now in the story. She may not have power now, but she's got these relationships that will be very powerful in the future. So, not to spoil anything, but I think it's great for the unsuspecting fan, this introduction to this character, especially when you eventually transition into Olivia Cook, who is an absolute powerhouse as an actor.
I think some of the subtleties too, maybe not so subtle, but even at the tourney when obviously Damon being a dick chooses her brother to joust against and then asks for Alicent's favor. And like she kind of...
He fucked him up too.
Yeah.
You better not have no brothers.
But like the look she gives Otto too, I think was kind of like a, little teenage rebellion type, like... Yeah. And
he was pissed.
So like little things like that I really enjoyed from her character. And I think she was very sincere, even though her father puts her in this fucking disgusting situation. She seemed a little sincere when she's trying to comfort Viserys with one of her favorite books, like, and sharing that feeling of loss.
Right, and she says to him, when I lost my mom, everyone spoke to me in riddles. What I really wanted to hear is, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you nailed it with calling her sincere, and I think Viserys definitely picked up on that in that moment.
Yeah. Talk about, like, this man needs some Legos.
That was actually really cool.
Yeah.
I like that he's a sort of intellectual. He cares about history. Yeah. He's got his little side projects. He's weak in the sense of that he's just a good guy. And sometimes you need a little nasty to you.
Yeah.
Even though Ned Stark, he was more of a fighter, even he was weak. So it's tough, man. When you're sitting on that crown, you need the best kings just have the perfect combination of all the traits to rule. Like Aegon was, they say, the best because he could be nasty, but he was also honorable at times, and he can decipher between right and wrong, and he had a strong sense of morality.
He let you bend the knee before you burned your people.
Yeah, right, exactly. He gave King Harren the option. Hey, a couple times. Yeah. I'm gonna burn this place down. It's gonna look awesome in the prologue 200 years from now. Trust me. But that sucks, right? You inherit a kingdom who, by all means, it seems that things are going well, even though the city seems to be a bit shaky. They established that Jaehaerys' reign was prosperous and peaceful, and here comes the heir, and you don't want to be the one who fucks it up. He gives off the vibes of a man with shaky hands. He's got that shakiness to him.
Yeah,
where he's trying to hold everything together, and it's all rattling around him. So I felt myself pitying him in this first episode. Just being introduced to him for one episode, I felt sympathy for him.
Yeah, and you see, like, he doesn't take things too... Not that he doesn't take things seriously, but when the Baratheon Knights calls the Queen that never was, and Otto was like, that's like a bit of a slight. He's like,
He's like, you want me to kill him?
He's just joshing around.
He's having a good time. We're all celebrating.
We're all having fun here. Well, that's Kristen Cole. Look at him.
That's Kristen. Yeah, he's a good kid. Handsome.
Yeah, and he could fight.
Yeah. Handsome, can fight, good looking. Said handsome and good looking.
Yeah, no, he'll definitely show up.
Swell fella.
He'll be later on.
Man of honor.
He'll be more in the seasons. He'll be more in the season.
Well, is there anything else you want to talk about? Any other moments? Because we are going to get more in depth with our spoiler discussion, which will be dropping a little later this week, and we'll have Teddy on that. So
yeah,
you better make some points now before Teddy steals them all.
Yeah, I think we go to like the when he basically vanishes Damon back to the Vale. I thought that was probably one of the stronger scenes of the episode.
Yeah, I think arguably just the setting. Obviously, the throne room looks so intimidating. I thought for one point Damon was going to remark, I could take out these Kingsguard if I really wanted to.
He looks shook.
You think so?
Yeah.
I don't know. His just whole vibe, I believe that man could do anything.
He just lost. He took an L earlier in the episode.
Yeah, he did. That is true. He did get fucked up. He told that man to yield.
Yeah.
No, but the dramatic scenes, that's what made Game of Thrones great. You go on YouTube and you can watch these incredible moments of characters just sitting down and talking. And there were several scenes like that in this first episode where they're going to stand the test of time as great dramatic moments that set up the future. Obviously, you need to deliver on a lot of the foreshadowing here, but the setup was just so strong. It's a very strong foundation. And that scene just contributed to that.
Yeah, I mean, Damon obviously calling out his brother for being weak, but him actually taking a stand and doing what's hard. It took, I mean, just a little comment like that to set him off. And obviously...
Well, he's family, right? He says, I've defended you. I'm your only ally at court. You're the only reason that I'm the only reason you're still alive, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, so many people want you fucking dead because you're an asshole.
You see how he stuck up for his brother earlier in those meetings, especially when dealing with Otto. So,
but I also don't think that's. I think Damon does truly care and love his brother, and it isn't so much about his own ambition as it is. You, like I said, you need a little nasty in you, bro.
No,
and you're allowing all these different people to manipulate you.
I think like that's kind of as brutal as it could be. Sometimes you kind of need that other side to protect you and your interests.
Yeah.
Without Damon, you can see how everyone's already starting to kind of try to sink their teeth into Viserys here. So, yeah, I mean, that's a decision. We've seen it many times where certain decisions characters make, even though it might be the right thing, could come back to haunt them.
And that was a great moment in the end, seeing the other houses come to swear fealty to Rhaenyra. We got the Rickon Stark, Lord of Winterfell. I'm sure although he didn't look like a Stark, honestly. I didn't like that as Ned's ancestor.
No?
I always want a manly-looking man.
They all can't be,
They're the Starks, man. They go back to the first men.
I don't know.
Okay, well, whatever. That was cool. We see the Baratheon.
Yeah.
So, and like I said, that was a big moment for her.
Well, the Baratheon, he hesitated. I don't know about this.
Right. Yeah, he did hesitate for a little bit.
A woman, you say? I don't know.
No, I mean, it's unprecedented.
Yeah.
For the country as a whole to have to swear fealty to a woman. And these are vows that are considered to be sacred. So when you bend that knee, that's supposed to be for life. So it's an important moment. That's essentially the first step to sitting on the Iron Throne, is having the backing of your allies when you know that your succession may be challenged.
No, all these pledges are meaningless. Even like in just Game of Thrones in Westeros. It's supposed to be the most sacred thing, and you can't go against your honor, and people are just like, that's
yeah,
I'm
they
not
go
gonna do that.
back on their words all the time.
Yeah.
But it is, I think, an important step to at least get those words.
Yes. And I think that was an excellent shot of her at the bottom of the throne with her father on top, and him swearing with him announcing her as his heir. I thought that was actually very well done. A great shot. And just a great moment. I think that's one, like you said, that certain moments are going to stick out as the series progresses, and I think that might be one people look back on.
Yeah, I was watching this first episode and thinking of the first episode of Game of Thrones. Wow, things are peaceful here in the beginning. They're not going to stay this way, but it's nice to enjoy some of this peacetime. Rhaenyra riding on the dragon, nice little tourney. And then by the end of the tourney, everything goes to shit.
No, I think it did a good.
And then we get the ball rolling.
It did a great job. I think going back to that pilot, as much as I love it, I think a lot of it was just trying to piece everything together. I think the familiarity of the world and how how it works definitely helps them establish other things quickly, because I think I'm sure some people are new to this universe with this show, but I think having that knowledge helps you focus on other things, where I think for a lot of people, that original pilot, once Bran got pushed out the window, that was like, oh, what the fuck, now I gotta come back and watch and see how it all plays out. And then you start putting all the pieces together. Here you kind of know the pieces already, and just that intrigue comes from just the power dynamics and kind of where everything is left off at the end of this episode.
Very well said. I think that's going to be the interest for a lot of people. Powerful people vying for power. We've seen it in other shows, but they didn't have dragons. So we'll see how far they're going to take this in terms of quality and success. But I think most people are going to really enjoy this first episode. And I'm excited to get into it a bit further later in the week, like we mentioned with our spoiler discussion, where we will be joined by Teddy, who is our resident Game of Thrones expert. I always like putting that on him, get people warmed up for that, so they can be utterly disappointed.
How much you want to bet he thinks like young Rhaenyra is Daenerys?
I would bet my life savings. Alright guys, that does it for this video. Thank you for joining us for this review. For Aaron the Nerd Soup Monkey, I am Beau Oliver. Before we sign off, I want to quickly spotlight our weekly podcast, the Nerd Soup Podcast, published every Wednesday at noon. Every week you could join myself, Aaron, Teddy, and the rest of the Nerd Soup crew as we discuss the hottest stories in movies and TV, equipped with some off-the-cuff commentary on the world of pop culture, while also providing extended reviews for the movies and shows we love. You can subscribe to our podcast channel on YouTube at the Nerd Soup Podcast, which can also be found on our Nerd Soup homepage, and you can listen to episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and all of the podcasting platforms we publish to. Thank you again for joining us on this review, and we will be back next week to review House of the Dragon, Episode 2.
Damn, we were making some good points in that video. Hey guys, Aaron the Nerd Soup Monkey here. Before we end this video, I want to give a quick shout out to our Patreon supporters. What can I say about you guys that I haven't already said about myself? You are the most important part of the channel and the main reason we keep going strong. Like Beau says, you keep the lights on in the fridge so the fridge is full. Or something like that. So, from everyone here at Nerd Soup, I'd like to thank you guys for your continued support. If you're interested in joining the ranks of our Patreon supporters, head over to patreon.com/nerdsoup and check out the rewards we offer to our patrons. We recently dropped some new stickers for you guys to check out, or you could choose a tier that will allow you to select a movie, show, or video game for us to review. We've got a full slate of fan-suggested reviews coming your way, and we're really excited about the chance to review some of those movies and shows. We've also got t-shirts, mugs, behind-the-scenes videos showing how we bring our videos to life. And once again, thank you to all our Patreon pledgers who have been supporting us throughout the years. Without you, we wouldn't be able to convert all your pledges into cryptocurrency, so thank you from my future self for making us broke.